In this lesson, we'll take a look at the use of ramps to modulate color over the surface of an object. Alright, so instead of using a material with a single color, we can start to introduce different nodes to this. So let's go ahead and jump back into our Hypershade. I want to create a new material. So let's create a new blend. Here's our blend, and let's name this. We'll call this Fan Blade Blend, something like that. And let's go ahead and add it to our scene. Before we do that, I'm going to just go ahead and add a color so that we can see it. We'll add a green color. And so I want to go ahead and add it to all of these blades. So we can right click on this, add material, and now we have all of these green blades. But let's say that I want to have the color change over the surface. And so what I can do is go into my blend, and rather than just picking a color, you see these little checkered boxes over on the side. These are areas where we can start to introduce other nodes to derive whatever attribute we're looking at. So in this case, the color, we would come over here to this particular box, click on it, and then it would give us the option to create a render node that's going to be associated with that color. So in this case, it's listing our 2D textures, 3D textures, environment textures, and so forth. We can narrow that down just to a particular category. We'll do 2D textures, which are just 2D images. And so we have a number of different options here. We're going to come almost all the way down, and we'll see ramp. So go ahead and click on that, and it'll add that ramp in, connected in to our material. Now, if you look up here, you can see we're seeing the ramp now in our attributes. You can see these little connection boxes. So with these, you can jump back and forth with down the chain of connection. So we can go back to our blend by clicking this, and now you can see that that box has been replaced by this little square with a triangle on it. And if we click on that, we can jump back into whatever's connected to that, in this case a ramp. Now you can see in our viewport that we can't see that color anymore. Okay, so once we've added a node like this, we want to usually go in under shading and turn on hardware texturing. Okay, we can also key that in using the 6 key on our keyboard, so 5 and then 6. So now you can see something happening here. If we take a look at the ramp itself, you can see basically it's what you would call a gradient in maybe another application, but it takes one color at the top and another color at the bottom with any number of colors in between and blends between those. Okay, now the way that it blends and the direction that it blends is based on this type and interpolation. Right now it's a V ramp, so it's sort of going from top to bottom. We can also make it a U ramp, which will go from side to side, which in this case, and this is based on the way that these objects are built, these NURBS pieces, which are flat pieces. And we'll talk more about the specifics of UVs later, but it's really just based on how the UVs are set up. But you can see the difference. Before, when we had the V ramp, it was going from kind of around the surface like this. When we turn it into a U ramp, the gradient's happening from the end down to the middle. Okay, we can also change how it's interpolated. Right now there's a linear interpolation. We can also turn that off, and that'll just give us blocks of color, which is useful in some cases without any blend. Okay, but we can also change all the interpolation, make that smooth, whatever we want. Okay, so we can grab these colors and move them around on the ramp. Okay, same thing here. We can get rid of a color just by hitting the little X, and you can see how automatically now it's blending between these two colors. If we want to add a new color, we can just click here wherever we want to add the color, and then we can change that particular color to whatever we want, and it'll add it to our blend. Okay, and if we want to change that, maybe make it smoother, we can do that. Okay, the selected position you can see is associated with this, so usually just drag it up and down, and we won't worry too much about these options. Alright, so this is a good way to add simple variation over the surface. Now, it doesn't look like it's really helping in this case because we have all of these colors, but let's say we want to make these fan blades a gray, but we want to add a little bit of detail to them. And so maybe some shadowing and dirt coming in and out here and maybe in the middle. So what we can do is make this middle color kind of a gray color. So we'll get kind of a gray that we want for our fan blade. make it a little bit darker. And then on this red color, we can go ahead and get maybe a darker gray, closer to black. Okay, and we'll do the same thing on this end. Okay, get kind of a darker gray, even black. Okay, and now if we move this out to kind of tighten that black up, you can see how this blends out. So what we can do is add another gray in here and pull that down. Okay, and then we'll take this color, really darken it up, and pull it out until it's kind of where we want it. Okay, and the same thing here. Let's kind of darken this up a little bit, and we can kind of pull it out where we want it. And you can kind of see how that gives us that shading in there. If you wanted to add other details in here, you know, you needed a stripe or something, you just add another color inside there, you know, make that darker, and you could add that. Or if you wanted to make that a color for some reason, if it's got you know, paint on it, maybe it's painted around there, you can add that in. You can see you can kind of move it around a little bit, and we can always get rid of that. Okay, so in this case, it's something we're using it on something that's fairly subtle, you know, just adding some darkness, but we can start to combine our ramp with procedural nodes, which we'll do a little bit later, to really get some more interesting effects. And the ramps are going to be, if you're going to play around with the ramps, I encourage you to play around with them on some of the NURBS pieces, because those, you won't have to worry about the UVs. It's going to be pretty straightforward. You can get, you can really see very easily how it's being applied to the piece of geometry. Okay, you could it's really obvious that it's dark out here and it's dark out here and it's lighter in the middle. Okay, on the polygon pieces which require UVs, it's going to be a little bit different until we talk about those UVs. Okay, so play around with the ramp, and you just want to pipe it into the color of your material and just apply it to your fan blades. Okay, now if we apply it to this piece, which is also a NURBS, let's go in and take our fan blade material, and I'm just going to duplicate under Edit, duplicate shading network, and we'll call this fan front blend. Okay, and let's apply this to this piece of the fan. So we'll go ahead and apply it, and now let's modify our ramp. So it's made a copy of that whole entire material, so when we modify this ramp, we're not going to be modifying the ramp that's applied to these fan blades. So in this case, I want to actually make this a little bit of a color up here. So I'll go ahead and get rid of the black on the end. Okay, and I'll get rid of one of these grays, and then I can just pull this up, and let's actually make this gray into a color. So I'm going to actually add a particular red color in here. I'll put some values in here to get a nice red color, and if we want to turn off smooth, maybe actually turn it to none, we can get a much better idea of where that is actually, where the line actually is. And so let's pull that line down until it's inside that division that we created, kind of right in there. And then for this color, let's lighten it up a little bit. Okay, and if we want to darken it up at the back, we can add a new color back here, make that darker, something like that. And then if we want to change that to a smooth, and then we can kind of tighten up. Actually, we want to move it this way a little bit, kind of tighten it up there. Okay, so instead of just using it for shading, we can actually add color. So this is one piece of geometry, but we've added two colors to it. Keep in mind that the material is the specularity and the surface qualities of the material aren't being modulated by another node. It's just the color. So the specularity will remain the same across the material. Okay. So once you play around with the ramps a little bit and apply them to some of the different pieces, try it out on the fan blades and the front of the fan, and see what the different configurations will give you. Once you've done that, the next thing that I want to show you is using actually a ramp shader, and that's going to create a slightly different effect. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that in the next lesson.